So nice to be here with you again this month. Let's jump right in. What I want to talk about this month is the importance for women to live authentically. I've been doing some research on cancer for clients that I'm currently working with, and I came across some staggering information that I felt was worth sharing. During his more than 2 decades of research into the mental aspects of cancer, experimental psychologist Lawrence Lashan conducted personality studies of 455 cancer patients and in-depth therapy of 71 terminal cases. He found that this condition of despair, as he calls it, named to distinguish it from the more commonly recognized form of depression, was reported as predating the disease by 68 of his 71 cancer patients in therapy, but by only 3 of 88 other clients who did not have cancer. In The Will to Live, Arnold Hutschnecker wrote, "Depression is a partial surrender to death, and it seems that cancer is despair experienced at the cellular level." Dr. Bernie Siegel states that men are generally better able to express anger while women tend to hold it in and become depressed. That was really important when I read that because historically, women have been conditioned to believe that it's unacceptable for them to express anger or frustration. We are still trying. There are TED Talks still coming out to this day about how we deal with gender bias. In other words, women are supposed to be soft and nurturing. They're not seen in a favorable way if they express the stronger emotions that are acceptable that when men do, are considered leadership attributes. Also, right into the 1940s, even early 50s, women who were reaching a midpoint in their life into menopause and having hormonal changes, and they started expressing their emotions with what their bodies were going through, were being committed. So it became unsafe even for women to express their emotion and repress it. I came across even more staggering information when Dr. Siegel reported that a patient who developed cancer after her children left home expressed in a letter to him, "I had an empty place in me and cancer grew to fill it." The cause may simply be gradual dissatisfaction with the role of housewife, Siegel states, if that role is unfulfilling for the woman. It's not the role itself, but rather the feeling of being trapped. So now we can see a cancer diagnosis as a course correction in hypnotherapy, a blueprint of one repressed expression that, if corrected, leads to healing and a brand new expression of life. These statistics really blew my mind. Housewives get 54% more cancer than the general population, and 157% more than women who work outside the home. 157% more. When the results were first published by William Morton of the University of Oregon, researchers assumed there must be a carcinogen in the kitchen, and most resources were spent there. Very little resources have ever been given to researching how women can feel trapped by one defined role in life and not living the life she wants, but instead a performance. So I was just speaking about this recently in my Saturday group workshops, living authentically versus performatively. And it's kind of interesting with the younger generations, our kiddos, and social media, and how performative social media is. There's research now that shows that women who earn salaries or are self-employed have less cancer than housewives. And cancer is more prominent, listen to this, in convents than in prisons, because in prisons they can express more emotion. Women historically have had a lack of emotional outlets. It's been much more acceptable for men to get angry than for women. Siegel believes to some extent that cancer is not a primary disease. It is partly a reaction to a set of circumstances that weaken the body's defenses. Really important. Siegel believes, and I absolutely couldn't agree more, that effective treatment must get a patient to become the kind of person who can live comfortably and happily in spite of such stresses. In the book Jonathan Livingston Siegel authored, Richard Bach wrote, "Here's a test to find whether your mission on earth is finished. If you're alive, it isn't." So this got me thinking. Happiness and emotional well-being is medicine. For women living a life of her own versus a life of performance for others sends signals to the cells, effectively communicating with the immune system. It is this communication that keeps the immune system strong. Our ability to express ourselves and create in ways that bring joy to our lives and then to others. We live effectively and authentically. Science is showing that if we do not feel that, in whatever form that takes, so if work brings you joy or traveling brings you freedom or contribution to others through service or volunteer work, or whatever it is for you, it doesn't even have to be a job per se. It's how you find joy in your life, your way, your authentic expression of you, your innate skills, your innate gifts, your talents, your abilities, what makes you happy. It's following that voice inside of you that guides you, that knows, that innate wisdom. But what happens is we don't. We keep running into conditioned stories that block us from believing that it's possible. And it's those beliefs that need to be reframed. It is this mismatch that I want this, but I don't believe I can have that creates an illness environment where we start to withdraw, retreat, unable to express frustration or anger, and that creates the environment of feeling hopeless. This signals the immune system with the opposite of life messaging. It begins signaling faster death messaging. In fact, Dr. Kissin, an internist, studied a group of smokers, comparing those who had lung cancer with those having other diseases. Based on personality tests, Kissin found the cancer patients had poorer outlets for emotional discharge and concluded that the more repressed a person was, the fewer cigarettes were needed to cause cancer. Morgans Jensen of the Yale Psychology Department showed that defensive repressors die faster than patients with a more realistic outlook. Those who say, "I'm fine," even though their life is in a shambles, their relationship is a mess, their kids are struggling with drugs, they mask it all and they say, "I'm fine. I'm fine. It's okay. I'm okay." Jensen feels this behavior dysregulates and exhausts the immune system because it is confused by the mixed messages. That, right there, is why I became a clinical hypnotherapist. Not a hypnotist, not a psychologist, but a clinical hypnotherapist. How does the immune system compare that messaging? What's the mechanism? It's the subconscious mind. Its job is to govern the body. It directs the autonomic nervous system. And the ANS regulates both innate and adaptive immunity through the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches. And an imbalance in this system can determine an altered inflammatory response. So you can't trick your immune system because its direction is coming from your subconscious mind that knows every thought that you have. So that means that living a life that feels fulfilling isn't a pipe dream, isn't something that's out there, isn't a maybe or a future possibility. As we age, it's a life requirement. We simply must live our lives each day with some happiness, some joy, some laughter, and fulfillment. We can have the big dreams, but along with them every day, creating that journey, it has to be filled with joy. We have to express some form of joy and happiness and fulfillment. Because we're evolving and growing and expanding and radiating, or we're internalizing, we're repressing, we're engaging sympathetic drive, stress response, driving inflammation. When we pretend we're fine when we're not, when we walk around with beliefs that are very self-negative, world negative, humanity negative, hope negative, or hopeless, our immune systems are responding. If we deny our deep desires, our true feelings, while pretending our life is enough, that we're good when we're not, that mixed messaging opens the gateway to overriding the immune system. It weakens and becomes exhausted, constantly fighting our own negative, limiting beliefs. We are self-fulfilling prophecies, and a diagnosis like cancer, scientists are realizing more and more every year, is a call to live a different life. We each have a purpose here. None have to be grandiose to change the world. We do that first inside of ourselves, and that ripples out. So every single one of us are needed. We each have that voice inside of us that guides us. And if we can learn to be brave, if we can learn to be courageous, if we can learn to trust that innate wisdom within us, what we've been conditioned away from, trained away from, if we can learn to investigate and sit with uncomfortable feelings and emotions, express them without needing permission or feeling guilt or shame. We need to do some housekeeping, ironic as that sounds, of those stories that we tell ourselves of why we can't have what we want, why we can't live the way that we want, why we don't deserve it, why it doesn't work for us, why we're the one exception to the rule. We're not. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You are one of 8 billion people on this planet. That sounds like a lot, and yet 1 in 8 billion is magnificent and miraculous. If we can learn to trust that, if we can learn to trust that there's a path for us, there's a purpose for us, and we are supposed to be learning and growing and finding the value in that learning, but that it was never supposed to be personal. It was never supposed to equate to our identity. And that we can live however we choose to live. And that may require courage on our part. That may require a lot of moves in masculine energy and trust in feminine energy, that innateness within us that will guide us to where we're going. Then we are living a life with meaning. We are expressing ourselves. That is a regulated nervous system. That is a healthy body that is designed to manage stress. Humans aren't fragile. We are actually extraordinarily strong. But it is the everyday beliefs that we have conjured up since we were small children and compounded over time. Those stories that we tell ourselves why it won't work for us, that keep us feeling sad, that eventually break down our immune system, and that becomes a diagnosis. That is well worth considering. Is it worth it to clean up all the emotions and beliefs that we're carrying around? That heavy load of your past? Because those stories do not align with your purpose and your plan, and that mixed messaging is exhausting your immune system. What a gift illness truly is as we learn its messaging and we find the courage to course correct, to live our lives authentically, to give ourselves permission to be all that we are for ourselves first and not performatively, authentically. It's a course correction, one that we make sure we can't miss. And I thought that was a conversation very worthy of having. So if I can ever help you in any way, I am happy to do so. You can reach out to me through the website, megadamsonhypnotherapy.com. Thank you for this conversation. Have a wonderful rest of your month. Happy Easter if you celebrate, and I'll see you next month. Bye for now.